I have finally done it. We have won all 4 leagues on the testing database for the first time in FM23. The tester is far more competitive this year than it was last year, in which many of my videos, maybe even most of them, won all 4 leagues. But this year, the Elite League has been very elusive, and when I have won the Elite League, I've usually fallen short somewhere else, like either in balance or in average, or fallen just short in Elite while winning the other 3. But today's tactic is a doozy. We've been playing it on my stream save with Vasco da Gama on Twitch. You can find the link to the description to that in below, where I go through lots of different tactics trying to figure out the best thing for the team that I'm playing with at the time, or for the league that I'm playing in. And today's tactic has been crushing it on Twitch, and that's where it got put through the paces before finally being tweaked in the tester, which is the tactic that I'm going to show you today. But if you like this content, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. We are getting so close to 1,000 subs, and every subscription helps. So please hit that sub button, slap a like on the video, and leave a comment below on what you like about the tactics, what your favorite tactics have been so far in FM23, and what else you'd like to see from the channel. But without further ado, let's take a look at this spicy tactic. All right. Here it is, the 4-1-0-3-2 wide. So there are no central midfielders or MLs or MRs in this tactic. It is a lot of attacking players, which has been a feature, and this is a shape you might remember from the channel in FM22 that I hadn't quite gotten to work yet on FM23, but we played something similar in some end of game situations where we needed goals on the stream save on Twitch, and we're able to pull back some results playing a very similar tactic. So I decided maybe this tactic is just good, and we're just now starting to realize the best way to implement, and clearly we have figured that out. So a couple of changes. First off, we moved away from the pressing forwards in this shape and gone for 2 advanced forwards. Second off, we are playing all support positions behind them. That's going to be important because one of the issues with a shape like this, right, is how many goals it leaks. And this tactic is still a little bit leaky, but there are things that you can do to minimize the amount of goals that you concede and maximize the amount of goals that you can score that we'll talk about as we move through the tactic. So other changes that might be different than other tactics that you've seen on the channel. First off, we are asking for these overlaps. Everything else pretty standard to what you've seen from my tactics on the channel. I think I've already sort of sorted out the best ways that I like to function on this in possession instructions, but forcing these overlaps is something that's new. Second, regroup. This, I think, is the key to this tactic being successful. If you are counterpressing, you will concede even more goals and you will lose the midfield battle in every single game. But with regroup on, these support positions end up playing much deeper on defense and are actually super helpful players. But it means in the transition game, they know exactly where they need to get offensively. So as soon as you win the ball back, they're bombing forward. Whereas if they were sitting deeper in your tactical shape, they wouldn't get forward quite as often. They'd get forward with the play rather than getting forward ahead of the play, which is how you put pressure on defenses. So they will just start running back to their position as soon as they can when you win the ball, which is why, you know, that counter instruction is turned on. So I think that's one of the really important things about this tactic, is that regroup actually is what makes it tick. We are still high pressing, but we're high pressing a little bit deeper, right? We're regrouping and then pressing. Those advanced forwards maybe do a little bit of pressing prior to the regrouping, but also I'm trying to trap people inside, and if they get outside, trying to stop those crosses. Stopping the crosses is one of the things that keeps these wingbacks on attack honest. They are trying to attack, but when called into action defensively, they are using their pace to try and get back and pressure those crossers of the ball, which is what you need to make sure that you have some form of like defensive stability in this kind of tactic. So that's why in this particular tactic, we have made sure that we stop crosses. Now, on a high press tactic like this with no midfield, normally I'd play like a higher line, but because regroup is turned on, when your defensive four intercept the ball, these midfielders are going to be closer to the play. They will be passing targets. They'll be deep enough that you don't need to bump up the line to create some kind of passing triangle between the fullback, the DM, and the winger, because the DM will be far enough back that they will be a part of some kind of passing triangle between those three players. So that's why we have stop crosses, and that's why we have the standard defensive line. Now, get stuck in, I think, is very good against the AI. You just have to know when to turn it off. So let's talk about changes that you can make to this shape. And I know this section of the tactic is going to be pretty long because I do want to make sure we're like explaining everything. So at the end of games in a tactic, I'm pulling back my IWs, and I'm pulling back this guy here to a CM role. And maybe they're box-to-box midfielders, maybe they're defensive wingers. It kind of depends on what the opponent is doing. And sometimes I'll even drop like this guy to shadow striker, or at least make it like a pressing forward on support or something like that. So you have lots of options to kind of go through here. Let's push these guys back up. And make sure we're looking at the original thing. So advanced forwards are taking more risks, but shooting less often and tackling harder to make sure they're in that press. Everybody is on take fewer risks and shoot less often. And we have this like AM just like on, I think he had instructions, but we have lost them. So let's quickly reload the tactic and make sure we have all the instructions correctly for those of you, especially on Xbox, who need to like recreate the tactic. So no, it is a vanilla AM support, which is something that you can make a lot of changes to if you have a player that you really want them to play a certain way, which gives you a lot of flexibility in this kind of role, or if you just want the player to have a mind of their own and they do things their way. It's a vanilla ball-winning midfielder on defend. Now these wingbacks though do have a lot of instructions. You want them taking more risks. You want them crossing more. You want them dribbling the ball more. You want them as ball carriers on these overlaps to provide those assists, staying wider, shooting less often. Like this is the kind of instructions you've seen. We want this ball playing defender dribbling more and really carrying the play as well past this past this BWM, which is why, if you notice, this IW support has a roam from position so that they can get into a place where they need to be to take advantage of the driving run of the ball playing defender, whereas this one doesn't have roam from position, and that's the reason why. And then this center back on defend as well. So those are all the instructions if you need to recreate this tactic on Xbox, but this tactic, I think, is incredible, and you should see a lot of success with this tactic. Pace is important. Again, I like to play left footers on the left and right footers on the right, but in this particular tactic, I think it's less important because you will be getting the width from your wingbacks, less so than getting the width from your IWs, which is what happens when we play fullbacks and some of the other tactics on the channel. So I hope you enjoy it if you get some success playing it, but I really do believe this is the best tactic that we have had on the channel this far. It only took us 19 tests to get here, but here we are, and this is the tactic for FM23 that to this point I stand behind the most. So let's take a look at some highlights. You can really start to understand how this tactic attacks the opposition. So this is going to be a little bit longer of a highlight because I want to sort of show you the power of what these wingbacks on attacks do in both of the high press prior to the regroup and like really stopping the outlet passes from the opposition. So Paulinho here starts the ball in, and Marçal wins the ball away from Olise, but now Isaac has the ball. And if you check it out here, this person's in recovery mode. That's the left back. There are two center backs, and then there's Isaac, Malinovsky, and Raspadori. There's like a midfielder back here, Gudelj, but we've got three attackers with two defenders and a defender on recovery mode about to vacate their position as well. So we'll see, like, there's not a goal yet from this highlight, right? Malinovsky here. We're back to like a slightly more reasonable position here for the defense. Everyone's marked except Isaac right now, but he's kind of trailing the play. Malinovsky maybe dwelled on the ball a little too much, and Kike Salas got on the ball, but there's nowhere for Kike to go with the ball, right? There's just nowhere to go. Malinovsky's right in front of him. Izak's blocking these two outlet passes. All of the defenders here are behind attackers. There's just nowhere to go with this ball at all. Even our DM, Locatelli, in this game is waiting back here, kind of blocking any outlet. So what ends up happening is they win the ball, but there's nowhere to go. So they just have to hoof it. And there's only one person forward. And the reason for that is their wide players are pulled back by marking our wingbacks. So their wide players aren't even in support anyway. So even though we only have 2 players back right now, they have only 1 player forward because their wide players are marking our wingbacks that are on attack. So we clean up this long ball, and then here's where the new play starts. Pereira, the wingback, is still very high. And now that we have the ball and he's on attack, he can turn around here and move forward again. As soon as he's not the passing outlet, the ball goes center, Pereira starts to move and start to run. He'll get deeper. Like, look at him go. There's no ball here yet. There was no idea necessarily for Pereira to go wide. And Isak, I guess, has the chance to turn and run here, but he's got this defender who's at full speed already. There's not going to be room for Isak to get into the middle. In fact, he tries to go too hard and does lose the ball. So the ball gets cleared wide because, again, there's no place for Salas to go with this ball. He can't connect with the wingbacks. He can't connect with the midfield because of how congested our attackers are up front. So he has to play out wide, and then Pereira is there to flick it right back into the mixer. Isak heads it on, and Raspadori scores. But this whole play was caused at numerous points by not necessarily high pressing or regrouping, but just because of the volume of players we have forward, it cuts off all of the lanes that the opponent might have for distribution, leading to long balls. Defenders collect, but our wide players are still pushed up, so they become part of the offense right away as those defenders start to recycle possession from those long balls. So that is one of the things I think is really important about this tactic. We took 3 minutes going over this highlight, but I think it's something that really illustrates why this tactic works, why those attacking wingbacks are actually really helpful defensively, because in their third, they provide so much pressure to prevent the opposition from getting out and getting away with the ball and restarting their own possession. They just end up having to hoof it. All right, with these overlapping players in the tactic, you will see a lot of possession forced through the middle, because that's where we have numbers, right? We have that DM, we have those inverted wingers, we have that shadow striker. But then as soon as that clogs up and everything moves narrow, then our balls tend to go back outside to the wingbacks, which then stretch the defense back out and allow for lots of spaces when the crosses come in. So let's watch this kind of happen here too. Like, Olise is covered here, so he's got to dump it back to Tyler Adams, who's playing DM right now. Tyler Adams' first option now then, rather than look at all this marking and all this congestion in the middle, is to go to Pereira, who is wide open on the outside. The Olise, the inverted winger on the right, being on the interior of the 18, is pulled in this left back pretty far, and so that leaves Pereira wide open as that wing back on attack. So Pereira here runs with the ball, gets to the byline, puts in the cross, except he's covered well. The recovery run's been great, but that means Olise is left unmarked because their wide attackers aren't tracking back deep enough. And look, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players in the box for Ferreira, and Luke Thomas, the left back, is over here as well in an attacking position. But Pereira cuts it back. Olise has tons of people to pass. He's got an unmarked shadow striker in the box, and he plays the dummy, and then Leon Bailey scores. So either way, like, whoever would have scored this ball here, there's just so many options that we could play a dummy in between the penalty spot and the top of the 6 and still score. Like, just absurd how much offense is there and how much pressure those wingbacks put on the defense. It's just phenomenal. All right, so the same thing happens on this highlight, except down the left. And this is another illustration where the wingback is the primary creator in the play, isn't getting the actual assist, but they may as well have, because their use of space and the ball-winning midfielder's willingness to spray wide to those overlapping players is what creates the offense. So again, Tyler Adams here finds Luke Thomas this time down the left, as he's got no entry pass to the center because of these midfielders, but does have a wide pass here to Thomas. Thomas gets the ball, is able to run with it into a positive attacking position, gets the ball in, Olise tips it back to Raspadori, who scores. Once again, 5 bodies in the box for the wingback to aim to. The other wingback is at the top of the box waiting for a rebound or a clearance, along with the DM also providing that safety net if the ball does kind of come back out from the defense. So it's just how much pressure you can put on and how far back you're pushing their attackers as well in order to cover. And they're usually not even in a good enough position to cover anyway, as we saw on these last 2 highlights. Wow. Take a look at the results. You can get a quick look here before we go a little bit more into depth, but it is a channel record in the Elite League of 73 points in that league, which is just an absurd total. 95 points, I'm sorry, in the Underdog League, which you can't see right now behind my giant face, but the numbers here are just overwhelmingly positive. So let's take a look at the detailed league tables, and we'll start with the Underdog League. In the Underdog League, it is 95 points with a plus 83 goal difference. We talked about, will this tactic leak goals? Well, not in the Underdog League, where it's only conceded 23 and only lost 1 game away to Copenhagen of all teams, plus 83 goal difference with 106 goals for. And this is one of the lower totals of goals for that the tactic generated, which is shocking because 106 is a really big number. In the average league, though, the team put up 110 goals in the average league. That's the highest of any tactic on the channel thus far this year as well. While conceding 44 isn't like the best number, but if you look at it over the course of the division, it's actually the 3rd best defensive record in the average league, and not too far off the pace of Roma, who's in first. But the points don't lie. 84 points, plus 66 goal difference, 110 goals scored in the average league. This is maybe the best result we've had in the average league as well. If not, it's very close. In the balanced league, the overall points total may be a little bit disappointing at 83, right at the line where I think the tactic is performing excellently in the balanced league, but it did win the league. It does have a plus 82 goal difference with 128 goals scored, which is an absurd number, especially in the balanced league, where there are some very good teams in this division, and it is just scoring boatloads of goals, which is something that is sort of like, what's happening with this tactic and the whole goal of the tactic in the first place. 46 goals conceded is also the 3rd best defensive record in the division. So before you think like, hey, this is not a great defensive record, remember, like, relative to the league, it is a pretty good defensive record. And this is without making any of the changes that we talked about in the tactics section of the video. If you were in your saves making changes to your tactic after like the 60th, 70th minute, when you have a 2 or 3 goal lead, you're not going to leak those late goals because you've gone ahead and you pulled people back and you've changed your instructions, just like my other video. The link is right here for what changes to make at the end of a game to see it out and not concede any more goals. So I think you could bring this number down even in this league. And then finally, in the Elite League, 73 points is a channel record. 90 goals scored in the Elite League, I also think is a channel record. Now, we are conceding 60 in this division, but that's middle of the pack, right? Like, there are a lot of very good teams in this division. Plus 30 in the Elite League is a crazy number, along with the 73 points. And that's with dropping the last 3 games, still held on to the title. It did help that Bayern also only picked up 3 points in their last 3 games as well, but we held on and we scored 90 goals. We were plus 30, clearly the best team in the division. We had 23 wins. This is just an amazing result. This is a tactic that I cannot recommend enough, especially if you have any kind of pace on the wings and pace at fullback. You will just demolish the AI. Making some changes too at the end of games to stop some of the late goals that you could concede, staying in this attacking shape all game. As you get tired, obviously you're going to concede some goals in that last third of the game. So if you're making defensive changes, making the correct substitutions as a human manager, you're going to shave 10 goals off this result just from those changes alone. And so I think that this tactic is perfect for you. It is perfect for me. It's crushing the Brazilian league in the stream save right now. So I'd love to see you join us on Twitch. Come hang out, check out the tactic in action and the changes that I'm making to it live, as well as future tactics on Twitch that I will be developing with the teams that I'm managing. So again, again, if you want to support the channel, there are lots of ways. First off, follow on Twitch like we just talked about. Second, and most importantly, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Help me hit 1,000 subscriptions so that we can start, making some money from this project. Obviously, it's a little gauche to talk about that in a video, but it is important to us as creators to hit those milestones so that we keep going, and I'm still motivated to provide you with this excellent content. Also, make sure you like the video, leave a comment as well. And there is a Patreon. There is a link in the description. Patrons will get access to a version of the tactic that is for those end of game situations so that you can just make the change with a click of a button, as well as some set pieces that are available, some training regimes. There's a lot of other benefits in the Dropbox folder for patrons as well. So get involved as a patron, get some of those additional benefits, and just, be a part of the community. As always, you can download this tactic on the Dropbox folder, which you can get from our Discord server, which is linked in the description, or also in the description is a direct link to that Dropbox folder where you can download this tactic. But anyway, until next time, it's been a couple weeks since we've released a tactic. I hopefully will have one sooner this time, but we got to get back in the kitchen. I got to start cooking and find something new for you to try in FM23. Until then, see you later.